Your Honour, my name is Nathan Dowrick and I appear for the defendant, Johnny Wishbone. Your Honour, today I will make two submissions pertaining to the illegality of the evidence being presented against my client. Before I outline my submissions, I would like to outline to the court that only one piece of evidence has been entered against my client by the prosecution. That evidence is a written statement which contains a supposed full admission to all 106 charges that the prosecution is accusing my client of. The statement is a collection of information which was gathered from my client in the process of an informal interview in an unmarked police vehicle on the way to the station, and also in a formal police interview which took place at the station itself. I would like to reference that this is not an official transcript, but rather a list of what the officer in question claims my client said. My first submission will be in reference to the fact that the statements prior to my client's interview at the police station are inadmissible on the basis that the police have followed no legislative procedure under the Police Powers and Responsibilities Act. My second submission relates to the interview at the police station itself, where the police executed their responsibilities under the Police Powers and Responsibilities Act incorrectly, therefore nullifying the legality of the interview and making that part of the statement inadmissible also. I will begin my first submission by directing Your Honour's attention to Section 421 of the Police Powers and Responsibilities Act. The section provides for the procedure which must be followed in the event that a police officer wants to question a child. Subsection 1 provides that the section is applicable if the police officer wants to question a person, in this case my client, who they reasonably suspect as being a child. In this situation, Your Honour, my client is obviously a child, and the police officer who questioned him should have found this obvious from the start and therefore followed the direction of Section 421 of the Act. That direction is present in subsection 2 of Section 421 of the Act and requires that A. The child is allowed to speak to a support person chosen by the child in a circumstance where they will not be overheard, and B. That person will be present in the interview. Your Honour, not only was my client questioned without the presence of a support person while in the police vehicle, he was not given the opportunity to speak to a support person at all. The police officer, who is unnamed in the evidential statement, then proceeds to question my client with an obvious lack of consideration for both his young age and Indigenous cultural heritage. As a result, my client was driven around a neighbourhood and had his attention drawn to a number of residences where he was routinely asked which ones he had broken into. My client displayed an obvious example of gratuitous concurrence as a result of his age, heritage, and lack of support from an independent person. And this concurrence resulted in the 106 charges being laid before the court today. To question my client in this manner is directly inconsistent with Section 421 of the Police Powers and Responsibilities Act. My second submission is in relation to the interview conducted at the police station itself. In this situation, the police officers made an attempt to follow the regulations prescribed by Section 421 of the Police Powers and Responsibilities Act, but made a number of oversights which resulted in the regulations further failing to be correctly followed. I will once again bring the court's attention to Section 421, subsection 2 of the Act, which provides that when questioning a child, the child must be allowed to speak to a support person of the child's choice without being overheard, with the assurance that the person will be present in the interview. Your Honour, the police statement does demonstrate that the support person was present in the interview and that my client was given a brief moment to talk to her without being overheard. However, my client was not given any choice in the matter of who would be there to support him. In fact, he was entirely unaware of who the support person was. The police did not make any effort to ask my client who he would want to represent him, and made no effort of their own to even contact my client's parents or relatives. It is entirely possible that if the police had followed their obligations under the Act, that my client would have had access to a trusted support person who would advise him differently to the support person engaged by the police, who told my client to answer everything the police asked. Chief Justice Barwick said in R and Ireland that evidence obtained unlawfully is obtained at too high of a price. Your Honour, in light of these legislative breaches, I would ask that Your Honour considers whether the evidence presented by the prosecution has been obtained properly and legally. If Your Honour finds to the contrary, I would appeal that Your Honour uses the power bestowed on the court by Ireland, and later affirmed in Bunning and Cross, to remove the police statement from admissible evidence. As Your Honour pleases.